All right, so thank you so much, Andy Andrews. I'm honored to be able to introduce you to people that would be watching this video. Andy, for the half a dozen people watching this that do not know already who you are,
Yeah,
best
right.
best-selling novelist, speaker, consultant for some of the world's largest organizations. You've got multiple New York Times bestsellers, including two of my favorites, The Traveler's Gift and The Noticer. And we were just talking a little bit about this shocking influence that you've grown. I like what the New York Times reporter said. You've quietly become one of the most influential people in America. I don't know how you quietly become influential, especially when I think it's nine of the past football national championship teams have been directly influenced by your books, your teaching, your work, and it's just incredible. God has really positioned you, but also you're working very, very hard to make a big difference, and that comes through in everything that you do. So I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to the leaders that
Thank
we
you.
serve, and thrilled to be able to have this time to dig into a lot of what I think is on your heart to share and teach, which is in your recent book. So thank you for being here today.
Man, I'm honored, Zach. Thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity to hang with you. And
Well,
the quietly thing, I mean, come on. I mean, it's like the last nine national championships. Yeah, and who is he? But that's quietly,
that's right.
It's just like somebody, when the Traveler's Gift came out, it came out in, was it 2003? I think, and one of the newspapers said the business book of the century, and I'm like, yeah, well, it's been a very short century. So,
That's awesome.
man, I'm honored to be here with you, and I think the quietly thing comes from the fact that I work mostly with leaders. I coach the coaches, kind of thing.
Yes,
So,
yes. Well, and that's my heart is investing time in leaders and helping people see and realize that God is still doing impossible things in their lives and desires to do impossible things through them. But we get in our own way big time. And I know
yeah,
you've got a lot to share about that. I have to tell you that I was thinking this morning, I don't know why this came to me, that years ago, I think I was an early teenager at this point. There was a book that came out that was a huge bestseller called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. And my mom got obsessed with this book and simplifying our life, and she cut her hair shorter, and she stopped making up the bed, and all these various things that the book suggests. And your book, your latest book, is called The Little Things: Why You Really Should Sweat the Small Stuff. So you have a completely alternate view, or I guess you're calling the questions the so-called conventional wisdom
right.
of sweating the small stuff. And so I'd love to just hear why. Why are you obsessed with this? Why have you gone through the trouble of writing this fantastic book about this?
Well, we have some time, so I'll give you a little bit longer answer than I gave Robin Roberts last week. You go on some things, you get like, we got 3 minutes. It's like,
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And so there's a very curious answer to this, especially for your audience, Zach. And it really, a lot of it goes back to the fact that I am kind of a nobody. I am, I'm not a celebrity. I don't have a Super Bowl ring. I don't have a gold medal. I wasn't the hero of some national disaster. And so because I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm working in this arena, there is one thing, there is only one way to differentiate myself, and that is I really have to have results.
Mm,
Yes. I mean, you could bring Peyton Manning in, and Peyton is awesome, but he can get by on just taking pictures with everybody, and everybody go home and tell everybody he was there, and that's worth a lot of money.
yes.
I can't get by on that, and so I have to have results. And when I started asking God years ago to help me find the things that would help other people, God help me understand some things that you want your people to understand, and give me simple ways to explain these things. Give me simple ways to explain these complicated things that are confusing your people. I began to find the answers in the opposite direction that everybody else was looking. And there is a biblical basis for this, and it's the Bible verse that says, "Don't conform to the ways of the world."
Yes.
Right? And so by looking the other direction, I began to find incredible results. And I knew I needed them in what we laughingly refer to as my career. I knew I could not get by on regular results. I couldn't get by on 17% growth or something like that. Right. I had to have companies that were doubling and tripling to get any attention at all or get any traction.
Yes.
And so when we started having companies, I had a company 2 years ago that I've worked with for 2 years now. And so they went 19 years to get to 5.4 billion in business. In the past 2 years, the first year they went to 11.4 billion.
Wow.
And the second year went to over 17 billion. And I don't know anything about their industry. It is just some little things that I found about the people part of it and about their focus part of it and their leadership part of it. And so these little bitty things become so incredibly important. Now, for years, you talk about not conforming to the ways of the world. See, for years, we have bought into this don't sweat the small stuff thing because most of us, we are drawn to people who have the big picture. We want to promote people with the big picture. We hire people with the big picture. Who do we want as the leader? Well, I hire him because he really has the big picture.
Yes.
But a lot of times, big picture people seem to forget that there are little bitty things that have to be taken care of and understood before this big picture can come into view. When Leonardo da Vinci was creating the Mona Lisa, his friends kind of took him to task because he had chosen the smallest paintbrush available nobody had ever used a paintbrush like this. And, all his friends are like, what are you doing? You've got to sell this stuff, and this is going to take you forever. You can't make a living doing that. Well, why are you doing that? And he said, I'm creating a masterpiece. Now, there have been a lot of masterpieces created, but I wonder how many of them were intentionally created. Before it was done, I'm creating a masterpiece.
Yeah, this is my purpose.
Right. And so now we look and we know that Mona Lisa was a masterpiece, and you can go see it in the Louvre, and if you hold a magnifying glass up to the picture, you can't even discern individual brushstrokes. It's a photographic quality, art historians say. But the point is that in your life, whatever you're creating, whether it's your business or your ministry, your family, or your very life, at the end of it all, whether you have created a disaster or a masterpiece, either way, it will have been done one tiny moment, one tiny brushstroke at a time.
Yes.
And so to create a masterpiece, one can't just visualize it and grab the biggest paintbrush and slap it out there really quickly. You can have the big picture and totally screw it all up. Mm-hmm. And so it is some individual little things that make a massive, massive difference.
Yeah, one of the things I learned with a leader that I worked with side by side for years that I share with others, very much in line with what you're saying, is he would always say, having the vision is the easy part. Usually because people don't do anything to get the vision. Oftentimes even God gives that to them, this idea of where we're going. But it's all the little steps along the way, bringing all these people along with you. That's the hard part. That's where the real work is. And you're right. We live in a culture now, I think, that's so just set the goal, which is important. Know where you're going. Be clear on I'm creating a masterpiece. But the obsession with those smaller steps along the way. So I'm curious, did you have a particular day or a moment in time that you can take me back to that you realized, okay, this is something profound that I'm seeing with these companies or I'm seeing with these leaders, and I've got to get this down on paper? Because you've written multiple books, but not one not one, in my view, quite like this one. This is
Right.
a new level, a new step.
This book, Zach, was written because of 18 months ago breaking out into a cold sweat. That's why I wrote it. And I'll tell you, the day that happened, I was in my office right where I am now, and I had just gotten off the phone with a coach, with a football coach, and so I started kind of jotting down some of the successes that we have had with this material, with businesses, with some ministries, with some football teams, with a World Series champion baseball team, with some Ryder Cup stuff, some golfers, and just all over the map with special operations with our military. Yes. And I realized that the way we had done these things, I didn't have any of it written down. It was all in my head. And I suddenly became aware, I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. My wife and I have two boys.
Yes.
And I suddenly became aware that if I croak today, my boys are going to grow up and never know how this happened. They're never going to know how to pull this off in their own lives with the things because this is just as important for a family. Right. Or an organization or a church family as it is for a major corporation. Mm-hmm. And so that was when I started, I called Robert. I called the Robert D. And I said, hey, listen, I'm putting some stuff aside right now, and I am about to dig in. I have to get this on paper. You get it published if you want, but I have to get it down.
Wow.
And so that's really what happened. But the actual pieces of that puzzle came in several different ways. I think that a lot of them came as a result of the prayer that I pray every day, which is, God, help me understand things you want your people to understand. That if they did understand, they would live the lives you want them to live.
Yes.
Which means they'd have a relationship with you, which means when they're in trouble, they wouldn't go to Oprah or the government. They would go to you. And give me simple ways to explain complicated things that are confusing your people. The simple ways to explain things is a very important part of the process, because most people, I have found, would rather stick with something that doesn't work very well, but that they understand.
Yes.
Instead of moving to something that will work incredibly that they don't quite get.
Yes.
And so
getting stretched like that. Wow.
Right. So they have to understand it. And so one part of that came one day. I was inside out in the woods at a hunting camp, and my boys were out in the woods, and I was inside riding, and it was February. It was in February, and I heard a turkey gobble outside. Right now, this is early for a turkey to be gobbling, and I was very excited, and I was looking around, I was going, "Oh man, where are the boys? Do they hear that? Where are they?" And I'm thinking, I need to call Kevin. I did, my best friend. I got to call Kevin. Maybe, man, I need to call Joe too, because this is very early. I mean, we're all turkey hunters. We're all very excited. We're crazy people, and I couldn't find anybody. But I suddenly realized, that old song, "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," and I thought, I bet they aren't singing "What a Friend We Have in Andy" up in heaven, because I am evidently not a very good friend, because if Jesus is with me all the time, I'm running all over the house and trying to find these people to tell, and I would just all of a sudden imagine Jesus kind of following behind me going, "I'm right here."
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell me if you want to, and I took that, and I started realizing something I think is very profound, and that is that most people, when we say you need to dig in and seek wisdom, you need to seek wisdom. I mean, that was the second thing in the traveler's gift, right?
Yes.
To seek wisdom. Most people, when we think of seeking wisdom, okay, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna be around wise people. I'm gonna be very intentional about my surroundings, about what I allow myself to watch and listen to. I'm gonna seek wisdom. Well, that is seeking knowledge. Okay, we can read and grab knowledge, and we can listen to other people and grab knowledge, and yet the Bible says that wisdom, it says several times, wisdom comes from God.
Yes.
And it doesn't say most of the wisdom you'll get in your life will come from God. It doesn't say, a lot of wisdom will come from God. It says wisdom comes from God. And so if you look at what wisdom is a deep understanding of principles of God's. All the principles are God's principles. Now, yes. And you can understand how a principle works. There's plenty of people that understand how a principle works. A lot of knowledge out there about how to harness the power of a principle. But until you have a deep understanding, until you understand not just how a principle works, but have a deep understanding as to why it works as it does. Because at that point, you can begin to harness the power of that in ways that other people don't even see. You yes. can, in different contexts, in other areas of your life that seem not to have any connection to what everybody else is using that principle for. All right, so if wisdom is a deep understanding of the principle, that means wisdom is a deep understanding of a knowledge, right? And so if wisdom comes from God, that means that a deep understanding of the knowledge that we gain comes from God.
Yes.
And I realized that most of the time, all of the time, my entire life, when I prayed, my prayers were kind of like, I'd have my times that I would pray, but I would also pray during the day. And my prayers were kind of like, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this. Thank you for this day. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Thank you for being who you are in my life. Thank you for your son. Thank you, Father. I'm worried about this. And if you could take care of this, and Father, help me with this, and help me understand this, and Lord, do this. And if you could please, and Joe over here is having a tough time, Lord, be with Joe. And Father, thank you so much, and guide us today and bless us. Amen. Okay. Now let me get on this email. I got to get on the phone call. And my point is, if God is my friend and God is with me all the time, and I really desire something from God, I desire wisdom yes. from God, and yet I never shut up, and so I wonder, I've had a lot of people in my life, just like you have, Zach, come to me and say, I need your help. I need to understand something. Please help me with this. Help me do this. Help me understand this. But I want you to think about it. If you and I had somebody that came to us and said, listen, I am in a tough spot and I need some counsel. I need you to help me here. Help me understand this. Just be with me, encourage me through this. And here's what I need. And I need this specifically. And I need to understand this specifically. So thank you very much. And they walked out the door. You'd go, yeah. Okay. And then maybe a week later, they came back and said, I just want to remind you that I'm needing some help here. I haven't gotten any answers at all. And I'm really needing your help. And I'd like to go over again what I need the help with. And yes. so please help me. And then they said, okay, thanks. And then they walked out the door. You go, what is going on?
What is going on? Yes.
And so I wonder how many times God has rolled his eyes at me.
Wow.
When I've asked for understanding and I've asked for wisdom and just left the room.
Yes.
Boy, and so I have found, type A people, people that are trying to become better, people that are focused on improving, people that are focused on making more and becoming more and influencing more. We tend to think that we got to use every moment, that the more we work, the more we pedal, the faster we'll go.
Yes.
And yet I have found that in a lot of cases, just the opposite is true. There has to be a time. Now, I had somebody tell me, they said, well, I meditate. Okay. I understand what you're saying, but you got to understand that when meditation teachers teach you to meditate, what they're teaching you to do is empty your mind.
Right.
I'm not talking about being quiet and emptying your mind. I'm talking about being quiet and opening your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Allowing your mind to be directed and allowing your mind to be movable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've gotten a ton of answers because I've learned during those quiet times, to ask a ton of questions.
Yes. Well, I'm so thankful that you had that burden come on you. Primarily, it sounds like motivated first with your boys to take your own advice, which is to maybe stop or slow down a little bit on doing all this stuff with these other corporations, these other leaders, and make sure that you've taken the time to write it down. Because what you're sharing there is one of the big ideas that challenged me in reading this book is that if wisdom is a person, and I'm seeking wisdom, I need to, in this idea of, it's not just know your, like the big idea right now in culture is know your why and why do you do what you do as an organization, but you're putting a little bit finer point on it, which is if it's wisdom, understand why it works. And the verse that comes to my mind is let not the rich man boast in his riches and the strong man boast in his strength, and not boast in Alabama football, but I think is what it says. But let him who boasts. I don't
think it says that.
It doesn't say.
I don't think it says.
But it should.
I mean, you look at the 9 national championships. If Nick wasn't in there, it would not be that long of a string.
That's true.
Got 4 or 5
much shorter string. But let he who boasts in this, that he knows and understands me. He doesn't say just know me, but understand me. And that's such a. I think it's very easy to go, oh well, he's God, I don't understand. But you're really challenging me and anyone I think who reads this book to go a little bit deeper at not just understand why you do what you do or why you're working to do these things, but understand why these principles are true and why they work. And that's a totally different level. And if to me, that one idea, digging into that in the way that you guide the reader through is worth the whole book.
There's a whole chapter, and there's a whole chapter in there
mm-hmm.
on a little thing called why.
Yes.
And as you know, people would normally see that, and they normally think, okay, the why I'm doing this, why? Because I want a big house. Okay, the why I'm doing this, because I want to, I want to have more influence, because I want to make more money, because I want to make my family free. They think that's what this is, but this is way beyond that.
Yes.
This is actual harnessable power. When you understand how you are supposed to use that. And boy, you look at the enemy's forces against us. It is shocking to see how most of us have that question knocked out of us as children.
Yes.
Because our parents say, don't ask me that anymore. Don't ask me that about anything. You're driving me crazy. And so what happens is, as adults, we tend to only ask why when something is not working.
Right.
You got this line, and everybody's competing the same way, and everybody's going along. And all of a sudden, there's a dip, and now we go, why is this not working like this?
Yeah, and how do I fix it?
Yeah, why is this not? We're not having the success here. Why are Thursdays so low? What's going on here? And then when we get the answer and we get back up to street level, we quit asking it. See, the time for wisdom and understanding, the time you want to ask God why, is when it is working.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to double and triple your results. Is not why is this not? But to now ask, why does this work like it does? Why did we have that success on Thursday morning? Why did the people respond in that way? Why did that happen in because then you can begin to understand. You have a deep understanding of the principle that is guiding their behavior or the reaction or whatever it is.
Now, one of the things that I want to ask you about as we shifting from we're focusing on why something's working, seeking wisdom and understanding, and then something's going to happen. We've got to that's going to begin. If we are serious about this, it's going to change our perspective. And so I don't want to share in the book, because I wouldn't do it justice. The way you've put it in the book is far better than I could ever put it. But the idea here is that if reality or facts may be very fixed, our perspective of those can dramatically change what we're doing. So I'm curious about, I know you can talk a lot about what you've shared in the book, but I'm curious about in your own life, what are the disciplines and habits that you believe help you gain that perspective or apply this wisdom with that perspective?
Okay. Well, and this is in there too,
Mm-hmm.
but this is in the book too, but the key about how you apply perspective and what you said a minute ago, that's absolutely right. That, see, perspective is the only thing that can totally change the results without changing a single fact.
Yeah, so massive. Yeah.
Now people think when they hear perspective, they if you say, what is perspective? Most people would say it's how somebody sees something. Is how they see the glass. Is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? So their perspective on it is how they see it. And that is true. It's just not the truth. See, one of the biggest, tiniest, I say biggest, one of the tiniest pitfalls that has the massive resonance in our lives is that we do not understand, most of us, that something can be true and not be the truth. See, the truth connotes the bottom line. That's the bottom line. That's everything. That's the foundation. But many things can be true along the way. I mean, if you took a blind person and said, okay, I know you had never heard of this animal, but it's called an elephant. And so just feel around for a minute and tell me what an elephant is like and what it could be used for. A blind person might come back after 5 or 6 minutes and say, well, an elephant is very tall. It's very wide. It's flat. It could be used as a barrier, perhaps a gate, several elephants as a wall. Well, it's true. It's not the truth.
Yes.
Because until you get to the truth about an elephant, you're not going to have a complete picture or have any idea of all the many different uses an elephant can have. I mean, you could stop right there and have a true picture and have a true use for it. You can stop right there, which is what most people do.
But you're still missing the elephant.
That's right. And so when we say that perspective is how somebody sees the thing, that's true. It's just not the truth, because the truth is the revelation about how you can harness it. And here's what I'm talking about. Knowing that perspective is the only thing that can totally change the facts without changing, that can totally change the results without changing any of the facts. Think about that glass, that one person sees it as half full, one person sees it as half empty. Well, the facts never change. The glass is what it is. Okay? But we know that one person who sees this as half empty, if we look at the results of that life, we know that person is, they're more likely to kind of repel some people. They're less likely to get promoted, less likely to get hired, because they have that glass half empty view, and they're less likely to get opportunities because people just don't want to be around them. So there's opportunities out there, and then they just don't hear them because there's, people don't want to be around. Now, there's the person that sees the glass as half full. And those are the kind of people we're drawn to them, and we want to hire them. We want to promote them. That's who I want to lead this task. And if they're because there's so many people around them, if there's an opportunity to be shared or an idea that comes up, they hear it first because everybody's just swarming around them. Okay, so the results of their life, because of their perspective, the results are totally different, even though the facts remain the same. Now, here's the key. Perspective is not just how you see a thing. That's the truth. I mean, that's true. But the truth is, perspective is how you choose to see it. You choose. You choose to see it a certain way. I mean, it is your thinking that determines your choices. See, for years we've heard that choices determine our destiny. You want to make sure your kids make good choices because their choice is going to determine where they end up. That's true. It's just not the truth.
Yes.
Because there is a foundation below choice. I mean, if choice is written, just tell somebody, yeah, make good choices. Well, you might as well tell them, take this coin and flip heads every time. Right? Anyway, make good choices. But if you have no idea where good choices come from or choices in general come from, well, what chance have you got there except flipping a coin? Yeah. And so, but if you understand that there's a foundation below choice, and that foundation below choice is your thinking. It's your thinking. That is the truth. That is the foundation. You can't go any farther down than your thinking. And if you ever doubt that your thinking determines your choices, you got to remember that every choice you've ever made, every choice you'll ever make in your life is totally determined by what you think and how long you think about it and what you thought about and what you decide you're not going to think about, because you can't be distracted from thinking about what you got to think about so that you can decide you start thinking. Now, here's the amazing thing. It's God's greatest paradox. Our thinking determines our choices, but you've been given free will. And so you can choose how you think.
Right.
You can choose it.
Yeah, so the self-leadership takeaway there for me, as I listen to what you're saying, and it sounds like this is what you work really hard at in your own life, is making choices about what you think rather than just thinking about what choice you should make.
Right. And people say, well, how do you choose what you think? A lot of it is choosing, and you can, if you look at what are the things that lead my thoughts, what are the things that get in there somewhere? Well, you got to understand, you can choose how you think because you can choose what you read, and you can choose the people you will be around. You can choose what you watch. You can choose what you listen to. And maybe more importantly, you can choose what you will not watch. You can choose what you will not listen to. You can choose what you will not read and who you will not be around. Because when you choose those things, you're choosing the video that will or will not run in your head at moments that you don't mean for it. It is our thinking. We're choosing to shape our thinking with choosing our life's experiences.
Well, I think, too, that it's evident in our world today that the choices that most people are making, and this is not a political statement because I think it holds true on both ends of the spectrum of political views or even worldviews, people are more and more choosing to listen or put their attention to people or media that is already just reinforcing what they already think.
Right.
Right. So here's what I think. And so the choices I'm making are just reflecting a revalidation, a constant affirmation of what I already think, rather than I'm going to choose to put myself in some situations or around some people that are going to shape me. We were talking about our mutual friend, although for you, he's far more significant than a friend. For me, he's a friend, but it's the Robert D. The Robert D is one of those people that if I'm going to be around him, he's going to encourage, he's going to affirm some things. But if I'm around him long enough, he's going to say some things that shake me up a bit. He's going to say some things that stretch me, or then maybe I don't even like. And then I have to go back and say, okay, where's wisdom here, right? Let me ask you, I know I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Let me ask you a question that I think is extremely important to the leaders that we serve. And this may be my only shot to ever ask you this question, but I think if not, let me be the first to tell you, your ability to tell stories is superior. And I'm assuming you weren't a born storyteller. There may have been some innate talents there. In our work with leaders, as we try to help them grow giving, as we try to help them move things forward, what we're really trying to help them do is grow their influence. So here I am talking to a superior storyteller who has also quietly become one of the most influential people in America. Do you think there's a relationship between your storytelling ability and your ability to influence people? And what would you say to someone like me or another leader who wants to grow that part of their toolkit?
Okay. I would really, I normally I'm nervous about telling somebody, oh, buy one of my books. But if you had to get one of my books, it would be The Little Things right now, because that's my latest, and it has distilled everything I've learned. I mean, I think The Traveler's Gift is valuable. I think, that's still my book that does the best, but I wrote that a number of years ago. And one day I realized that a lot of the stuff I'm doing in those 7 decision seminars, the vast majority of it, I learned after I wrote the book. Right.
Wow.
And so this latest book, I mean, you can get it anywhere, and it's a hardback, less than $10, and it will explain some stuff that most people do not understand. And if you don't understand it, you can't possibly harness it. All right.
Yes.
And so the storytelling and influence thing, where that collides, and yes, I think that has a big part of it. And I'm very excited for you and the people who connect with you, Zach, because you understand influence. You're talking about influence. See, I hear a lot of people talk about leadership and what leadership is. But if you go to the bottom of the pool, if you go to the truth about leadership, the essence of leadership is influence. That's what it is. That's the
Absolutely.
essence of leadership is influence. And the essence of influence is agreement, not disagreement. This is why you can see the two different sides that, Republicans and Democrats, they yak at each other till Jesus comes. And have you ever seen anybody right in the middle of a conversation go, you know what? You're right.
Yes,
okay, I'm on your side now. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't ever happen, because they're so conditioned to disagree.
Yes.
Okay. What stories do is stories touch people in a place that nobody has ever gotten into. Stories find common ground, and stories create influence. I'll give you just a perfect example. The other day, I was somewhere and I did a podcast with a guy, and it was live. I was in his city, and so we sat down at the table. We did this podcast live, and after it was over, his assistant gave me this kind of bag of goodies, thank you for being on our show. Well, as you travel around and speak, people give you that stuff a lot. And, you don't always, you go, hey, and then you meet somebody and go, hey, would you like that? Because, you can't travel with all that stuff. You can't,
Right.
and it's like, yeah, if I want a bag of peanuts, I'll go buy them somewhere. But right now I want to give them to the maid. It'll make her happy, whatever. And so they gave me this bag, and I was kind of just glancing through it as I was, I hate to sound, I'm not ungrateful, but you have that stuff. You get that stuff. And
I've been there.
And so I give a lot of it away. And so, but there's this bag of coffee. It was coffee beans. And it was just a black bag and a sticker on it with his show name. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. But I'm going to give it away. I flip it over, and it said, 4 generations ago, in the hills of Guatemala, so-and-so Lopez's great-great-grandfather planted 3 coffee trees. Over the years, they da-da-da-da. And now, only 1,000 pounds of these coffee beans are produced every year, and they are put into small batches and roasted in small little things. And, we bought all that was imported to the United States to give to our da 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 da, and you will notice the so and so. That is because the soil that in the mountain. There's this whole story, and I was like, oh, I'm keeping this.
You gotta keep
I'm keeping this. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, and it was nothing in the world but the story
Yes.
that made that valuable.
Hmm.
And to be honest, when I tasted it, if somebody had just given me I would say, coffee, okay. But now I'm like, I think you can taste the hills. I do see that kind of chocolatey thing coming through from the ground there. But that story influenced me so much. And so the same is true. You can connect people. You can create influence with a story.
Yes. Well, you've done that in this book over and over and over again. That's one of the things that I really loved about this is, the first chapter is like, oh man, that's great. Ooh, ouch. Yes. Need to work on that. And then the second chapter and it's story after story, principle after principle. I just wanted to share one of the things that struck me the most as we wrap up is because it really goes to what we're saying about wisdom. You said, sadly, it is the wise voices among us that are being marginalized. And that's really why I wanted to ask you to take this time. And I'm so grateful that you did, because the leaders that we serve, I think are really going to resonate with that idea. They're trying to do meaningful work, really trying to lead people to think more deeply about how they invest their time and their energy and their resources to do something meaningful and lasting and eternal. And so I just want to thank you for that. And any final thought or anything you would maybe say as a challenge or a request to a leader who might be watching this saying, yes, I want to do that. I don't want to be marginalized by this crazy culture.
I think the best thing that I could urge you to do is to dig into chapter 13. Because chapter 13 is a little thing like change.
Yes.
And our society has been wrong about change, which is why everybody has a hard time with it.
Yes.
But I want you as leaders to understand that everything you deal with hinges on this one understanding. And society has it wrong. And if you understand how this really occurs and how you can help it along, how you can influence a change, because you've got to understand that right now, if you have a teenager and there's a behavior you want, basically you want that behavior to change. Okay, well, there is a specific way that'll happen. You got somebody that and they don't have a relationship with Christ, and you would like them to have a relationship with Christ. What you need them to do is to change.
Right.
How are you going to make that happen? Okay. How are you going to influence that? You've got people who do not come to choir practice like they ought to, or they don't come to church like they ought to, or they don't participate in certain. You want them to change. You want them to become people who do those things. Okay, there is a way, other than nagging and other than pointing things out, there is a way that you can influence that. And that's my groundbreaking chapter. It's never been written anywhere else. And so I would really urge people to dig into that, because that will help you tons.
That is so inspired and of God that you would point them to that, because I literally have my finger, as we've been talking, in chapter 13 this whole time because of the importance of it. So thank you for that. Again, the book is The Little Things by Andy Andrews. It's available everywhere. I would also really encourage you to check out Andy's website, andyandrews.com. Also, you can contact me. We'll actually be investing in some leaders by giving them this book. So if you're interested in that, let me know. But otherwise, go out, buy it. You will not be disappointed by the impact that this has on you if you seek wisdom as you're reading it. So thank you, Andy, so much for this time. It's a huge privilege and honor, and I have been altered and changed through our interaction here just today, and I'm sure that many others will as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for the time. Honored to be here. See you soon.
Appreciate it.